You check your bank account, and the number is lower than you thought it would be. You already knew it was going to be lower. You've been spending the week half aware of that. But seeing it confirmed does something to you. And then, almost immediately, you close the app. Not because you have a plan, not because you've decided to think about it later. You close it because the moment you saw that number, something in you just shut down. And now you're thinking about literally anything else. What's for dinner? Whether you remembered to reply to that text, anything. Here's what I want to ask you, and I need you to sit with this honestly. When was the last time you felt genuinely in control of your money? Not briefly, not in a burst of good intentions after watching a video like this, but actually calm, clear-headed, and in control? For a lot of people, the honest answer is either a very long time ago or never. And they assume that's because they're bad at money, because they lack willpower, because they didn't pay close enough attention in school, or because they never had enough to begin with. But what if the problem isn't you failing to manage money through stress? What if the stress itself is the thing that's making you worse at managing it? What if the anxiety and the bad decisions aren't separate problems? What if they're the same problem, feeding each other in a loop that's almost impossible to escape from the inside? That's what this is actually about. Not tips, not habits, the actual mechanism. Because once you understand why your brain does this, the guilt starts to loosen a little. And that matters more than you might think right now. The standard story about financial struggle goes something like this. People make poor financial decisions because they lack knowledge or discipline or access to the right information. The solution, therefore, is education. Learn how to budget. Learn about compound interest. Learn the right strategies, and then apply them. It's a clean story. It's also largely wrong. Or at least, it's wrong about the most important part. The missing piece isn't knowledge. But most people who are struggling financially know they should be saving more. They know they shouldn't have made that purchase. They know the credit card interest is brutal. The knowledge is often already there. What isn't there, what gets systematically dismantled by financial stress, is the cognitive capacity to act on it. Here's a concrete way to think about this. Imagine you're trying to solve a moderately complex problem, a puzzle, a work decision, something that requires a bit of focus. You can do it fine when you're calm. Now imagine trying to solve that same puzzle while someone is repeatedly tapping you on the shoulder and whispering, "You might lose your home." How well do you do now? That's not a metaphor. That's closer to a description of what financial stress actually does to the brain, physically and cognitively. And researchers have been documenting this in increasingly precise ways for the last 2 decades, not as an interesting side observation, but as one of the central explanations for why poverty and financial struggle can be so self-perpetuating. The conventional explanation puts the individual at the center of their own struggle. This reframe puts the system, and specifically the psychological system, at the center. And that shift matters enormously because it changes what you're actually trying to fix. Let's start at the level of felt experience, because that's where this lives for most people before it ever becomes a data point. Financial stress doesn't feel like one thing. It's not a single emotion you can name cleanly. It's more like a background noise that never fully goes away. It's the half-second tightening in your chest when someone mentions going out for dinner, and you're not sure if you can afford your portion of the bill without doing mental arithmetic that you hope no one notices you doing. It's the way Sundays sometimes feel heavier than other days, and you don't always know why until you realize you're not anxious about the week ahead. You're anxious about the paycheck timing and whether rent clears on time. It's the way you sometimes feel exhausted in a way that sleep doesn't fix. This isn't weakness. This is your nervous system doing what it was built to do under conditions of perceived threat. The problem is that it was built for a very different kind of threat. When your brain perceives danger, real danger, the kind our ancestors faced, it does something very efficient and very destructive in a modern financial context. It narrows. Psychologists call this tunneling. Your attention, your thinking, your decision-making all contract around the most immediate threat. Everything outside that tunnel becomes harder to see, harder to process, harder to care about. This is brilliant if a predator is chasing you. You don't need to think about your long-term relationship goals when your life is at stake in the next 30 seconds. You need to run, but when the predator is an overdue bill, tunneling doesn't help you. Instead, it makes you hyper-focused on the immediate number. How do I make rent this month? How do I get through this week? While simultaneously making it harder to think about the system, the pattern, the longer arc of what's happening. The very thing that could actually help you escape the situation requires the kind of big-picture thinking that financial stress chemically suppresses. Sendil Mullainathan and Elder Shafir, two behavioral economists, studied this in a way that I think about a lot. They found that preoccupying people with financial concerns, just thinking about a financial problem, measurably reduced their performance on tests of cognitive function. Not by a little. The equivalent in their studies of losing roughly 13 IQ points. They called this the bandwidth tax. Financial worry consumes cognitive resources that are then unavailable for everything else. You only have so much mental bandwidth, and stress is constantly spending it. Think about what that means in practice. The moments when you most need to make good financial decisions, when money is tight, when a hard choice is in front of you, are exactly the moments when your cognitive bandwidth is most depleted. The problem and the solution require opposite things of your brain. The problem demands your full attention on the threat. The solution requires stepping back, thinking long-term, considering multiple options, tolerating uncertainty. Stress makes the second set of tasks extraordinarily difficult to do well. And then there's the layer underneath even that. Because it's not just thinking that gets impaired, it's impulse control, the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain most responsible for long-term planning, delaying gratification, considering consequences before acting, is highly sensitive to stress hormones. Specifically, cortisol, which your body pumps out under sustained stress, progressively impairs prefrontal function. What gets relatively stronger when that happens? The limbic system. The parts of the brain associated with immediate emotional responses, reward-seeking, and threat avoidance. What does that combination look like in financial behavior? It looks like buying something you know you shouldn't, not because you've forgotten that you shouldn't, but because in the moment the relief is real and the future consequence is abstract. It looks like avoiding your bank statements, not because you're irresponsible, but because your threat detection system has flagged that information as something dangerous to look at, and avoidance is a perfectly rational response to danger. It looks like making a short-term decision that you'll regret later. Not because you weren't thinking, but because under cortisol, the part of your brain that calculates later isn't functioning at its full capacity. This is the part that I think deserves to really land because it reframes so much. The impulsive spending, the financial avoidance, the inability to stick to a budget even when you genuinely want to, these are not character flaws. They are the predictable outputs of a brain operating under sustained financial stress. You are not failing at managing money. You are managing money with a cognitively impaired brain and then blaming yourself for the results. There's one more layer I want to add here, because it's the one that really closes the trap. Financial stress doesn't just impair decision-making in the moment. Over time, it changes your relationship with the future itself. Researchers studying chronic stress have found that it affects something called temporal discounting, the degree to which we mentally shrink the value of future rewards compared to immediate ones. Under normal conditions, most people have some capacity to delay gratification, to say, "I'll be okay if I don't have this now, because I'll have something better later." Under chronic financial stress, the future gets devalued more severely. It's not that you stop believing the future exists. It's that your brain, operating under sustained threat, gradually learns to trust the present more than anything it can't see yet. Because the present is what it can actually control. And so you have this complete circuit. Financial stress narrows thinking, impairs prefrontal function, increases present bias, makes short-term decisions more appealing, produces outcomes that create more financial stress, which narrows thinking further. It's not a personal failure. It's a loop. And understanding that it's a loop is the first time most people can actually see it from the outside. Here's the question. Most financial content asks you to answer, how do I make better decisions with money? That sounds right. But given everything we've just been through, I want to suggest that's actually the wrong question. Or at least, it's not the first question, because better decisions require better cognitive conditions. And if you're inside the stress loop, the conditions aren't better. They're systematically worse at exactly the moments the decision matters most. The more useful question is this: how do I protect my decision-making from my own stress response? It's a different question. It moves the goal from be better to design around the version of yourself that exists under pressure. And that shift matters because it's honest about what's actually happening. It stops asking you to be someone who doesn't feel financial anxiety, which isn't possible and isn't your fault, and starts asking you to build systems that work even when you do. This is where it stops being about willpower entirely. Willpower is a resource that stress depletes. Systems are structures that operate regardless of how much willpower you have in a given moment. The person who is brilliant at financial decisions would build systems. The person who understands the stress loop builds systems for the same reason. Not because they're disciplined, but because they understand that discipline isn't reliable under the conditions they're actually operating in. Your identity here isn't someone who is bad with money. Your identity is someone who now understands exactly why those moments happened, and who can make that understanding useful. The first thing that follows directly from tunneling is this: do not make financial decisions inside the tunnel. We've established that financial stress creates a cognitive state where your thinking is narrowed, your impulse control is reduced, and your ability to value the future is impaired. That state is real, and it doesn't announce itself. So the practice is to create a rule for yourself that you set in advance. Not in the moment. Financial decisions above a certain threshold, whatever that number feels meaningful to you, require a waiting period. 24 hours minimum. Not because you need more time to think necessarily, because you need the cortisol to come down. Because the person making the decision 18 hours later is cognitively a different person than the one who saw the thing and felt the pull. Give that calmer person the vote. The second thing follows from the bandwidth tax. We now know that financial anxiety is constantly spending cognitive resources, and that one of its tools is avoidance, keeping you away from information that your threat response has flagged as dangerous. This means that one of the most psychologically loaded things you can do is look at your actual numbers clearly. Not to fix everything, not to make a plan, just to see. Regular low-stakes check-ins with your actual financial picture. Brief, structured, without the weight of needing to solve everything in the moment. Gradually diffuse the avoidance response. Your brain stops treating your bank balance as a predator when you teach it through repeated safe exposure that looking doesn't kill you. Behavioral psychologists call this exposure-based habituation. In plain terms, the thing you look at regularly becomes less frightening than the thing you don't. Third, and this is the one that follows most directly from the present bias finding. Automate anything where your future self needs to win against your present self. We've established that under financial stress, your brain systematically undervalues the future. Automatic transfers to savings, even small amounts, are not a hack or a trick. They are a structural removal of the decision moment. The moment of decision is where, as we've just learned, your present biased, bandwidth-depleted brain reliably loses. Automating removes that moment. The transfer happens before your brain has a chance to weigh in. It's not bypassing your judgment. It's protecting your judgment from the conditions that distort it. And finally, and this one is less concrete, but I think it matters more than it sounds. Reduce the emotional load of your financial environment wherever you can. That might mean unsubscribing from marketing emails that are engineered to create desire in exactly the brain state that can't resist it. It might mean telling a trusted person what you're working on, because secrecy about money is one of the most reliable ways to keep financial stress from ever being shared or diffused. It might mean recognizing the moments when you're most depleted, late at night, after a hard day at work, when you're hungry or exhausted, and treating those as protected zones where no financial decisions get made, the same way you wouldn't perform surgery when you hadn't slept. The stress loop runs best in isolation and exhaustion. Both of those are, at least partially, something you can work with. I want to leave you with something that I hope actually stays with you past today. There's a particular kind of guilt that lives inside financial struggle. It's not just about the money. It's about what the money seems to say about you, your worth, your competence, your ability to figure life out. And that guilt is one of the cruelest parts of the loop we've been talking about, because guilt is itself a form of stress, which narrows thinking, which impairs decisions, which creates more to feel guilty about. What I hope you take from this isn't a strategy, though the strategies matter. It's a more accurate picture of what's been happening. You've been making decisions with a brain that was operating under conditions designed to produce exactly those decisions. The loop isn't a moral failing, it's a cognitive one, and cognitive patterns, unlike character, can actually be understood, mapped, and gradually interrupted. The fact that you're still here, still thinking about this, still trying to understand it rather than just endure it, that's not nothing. That's actually the first move outside the tunnel. Not a dramatic one, but a real one. What we covered today is really about one half of the loop, the way stress impairs thinking. But there's a question that probably just opened up for you. Why do some people seem to break the loop while others stay inside it for years? It's not willpower, and it's not information. The research points to something else entirely. Something about how people relate to their own financial identity. That's where we're going next.